Hi everyone, today we got some pretty interesting price action here. You got kind of a low, higher, low structure. The S&Ps did get above this previous high just for a little bit, but then we sold off and closed below it. Momentum fading here. It's holding above the RSI. Do we get a continuation tomorrow? That's the big question. Hit this trend line and bounced, of course, but let's take a look at all of the charts and see if we can figure out anything for tomorrow. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got Fed Powell suggesting that the tightening program could be ending and opening the door to more cuts this year, which was super bullish for small caps. Small caps had a super strong run on the session. And you can see here he mentioned that he is nearing the point to where the central bank will stop decreasing the size of its bond holdings, but gave no long run indication of where interest rates were headed. I think we kind of know where that is, at least one, maybe two cuts this year. That's kind of what we're looking at. He stuck to his script as he is one to do, but the fact that he talked about potentially easing his monetary policy on the quantitative tightening that we've been seeing, they've reduced by more than $6 trillion. They've been tightening in an effort to reduce the more than $6 trillion that they hold on their balance sheet. And we've been talking about that for a while. We look at it every week as the numbers come in. Fed balance sheet has been reducing for a while. M2 has also been coming down for a while, and he did say that the Fed is nearing its goal of ample reserves available for the banks. So this is interesting, a little bit more information than we'd had from him in terms of quantitative tightening. We haven't heard any feedback on that until this point, but of course he had to temper it a little bit. If we move too quickly, inflation job could not be finished. We've been talking about that for a while. We got the data in July. Labor market has softening considerably, got those cuts, but we hadn't heard much about the funding here. So aiming for abundant reserves, ample reserves. How do we get to that number? What is that number? And the Fed balance sheet was huge, got close to 9 trillion, and it's come back down pretty significantly, closer to that $6 trillion number. So they've definitely closed out a good amount of money. But of course, what is the number that he's searching for and what are the conditions? Of course, we don't know that quite yet. Moving over to fear and greed, 30 from a 33, a little bit of a step down in markets. You can see slight bounce, continuation lower. We're actually lower than we were at this previous number, 32 there, down to a 30 now. Still expecting this to hit extreme fear. And this looks like a reversal, right? You have this kind of chop down, retest, kind of lower high setup. We'll see how that looks, but strength, neutral, breadth, extreme fear. This continues to decrease. We'll look at it later. Put call ratio continuing to elevate there. Volatility spiking back up today, as you would suspect. Safe haven demand, extreme fear, and junk bond demand, extreme fear. So quite a few metrics in extreme fear, but not everything is broken yet. Starting off earnings season, everything is green across the board. Really good numbers so far, beating estimates. For tomorrow, same expectations. Bunch of banks, except for United Airlines, want to see how they do. And then for the Thursday, continuing with that bank theme, pretty much all week until we start to get into the heavy hitters the following week. Moving over to the economic calendar, nothing for today except for Fed Powell speaking. Already talked about that. Really nothing for tomorrow, which will be interesting considering what the markets look like. Technicals will be ruling since there is no data to push us around. And then are we going to get this PPI number? Are we going to get retail sales Thursday? Also big questions there. Atlanta Fed GDP, want to see what those numbers are. You can see Fed balance sheet, $6.5 trillion. And then Friday, we have hopefully all of that unemployment data, but of course that's been pushed off 2 weeks at this point. Moving over to Max Pain. Max Pain for this week, 3 million options. That's actually come down a little bit. Interesting to see that put call ratio also coming down 4.2. Still a very high number, not expecting markets to crater based on that number, but it is coming down a little bit. Maybe it continues to come down and we start to see this fall closer to that 650 area. It's kind of mixed feelings in here between 650 and 670, but that does mean there's a little bit of room for this to fall closer to 655. Definitely could fall below 660 as well. This is kind of your midpoint, at least how I'm looking at it. 655 to 650 is kind of the range for that fall if it does come. Moving over to the charts, pretty much unchanged on the day. Did go much lower, got very close to the low. Even from the Friday session, you can see it here on that wick, right around that 653 area. Of course, not the after hours price here. This is the after hours move all the way down to 646. Didn't get anywhere near that that, but this wick here did close to that low, and then we held this higher low structure, rallied up mid-session. Like we talked about, definitely looks okay, getting a little bit more rally out after hours here. Momentum still very much bearish, RSI still very much bearish in the medium term, but in the short term, you got a decent little structure here. We're able to eclipse this high briefly before falling back, holding 21, holding VWAP. Based on this, you have to look for a test of the 200, in my opinion, up around 666.73 or so, and then looking for this next zone in here around 672. And then moving over to those tasty charts here, you can see came up, hit that 144 EMA, that held as resistance, came down, hit that 21 like we talked about, and then rallied out. Good volume coming through on that touch, and then getting a little bit of bullish price action there, back into bullish conditions on the 1 hour chart. That fall here had us in bearish, rallied back out, back to bullish, so a little bit choppy for sure. But remember, that daily chart still very much bearish with your trailing stop all the way up here at 678. So you're going to have pretty much mixed conditions until we can get above that level. Even if we get short-term rallies out, that is going to be the kind of pivot point. If we can get above that, look for the continuation. Otherwise, might see some sideways choppy in here. That could be interesting. Momentum on the volume weighted MACD still very much bearish. And then looking at the 4 hour chart here, again, still very much bearish conditions. You can see we fell towards that lowest ATR band, got very close to that, rallied back into the middle of this range. Doesn't look nearly as bullish here on the 4 hour chart as it did on the hourly. If this were to reject from this kind of midpoint here and fall to that lowest ATR band, kind of like it did here, that would take you all the way down to that kind of 648, 649 area, which is pretty close to the wick lows that we saw in that after hours price action. Obviously, that would be a big continuation lower. Moving over to the NASDAQ, NASDAQ looked significantly weaker here, came up to this high early in the session, sold off to this point here. The slight rally that we're getting doesn't look nearly as strong, did not get the higher high off of this level. So the NASDAQ underperforming today on a technical basis, interesting there. Also weaker on the structure here, down a little bit more than 0.5%. Didn't even quite get back to the low from the previous day. You do have this trend structure, which is holding. You can see we tested that trend structure, came in and rallied out there. But momentum bearish, RSI bearish here. We'll see if this continues to go lower. I do suspect that it will. You can see after hours, it's finding just a little bit of momentum, but structurally for me, the NASDAQ looks a little bit bearish. Even if we get a little consolidation here, I think we might get a continuation lower. Moving over to the tasty charts here, you can see we hit that lowest ATR band as we suspected that we were going to. Honestly, I thought it was going to happen sooner, but we hit that level, retraced up, hit the trailing stop. The trailing stop right now at 601.69, hit that zone and immediately sold off as you would suspect. So continuing to hit these trailing stops and sell off. Question is this a low, higher low structure here? Are we going to hit this one more time and sell back down to this lowest ATR band around 588? That is the bigger question. Certainly possibility on the longer time frame here. The 4 hour, this obviously looks significantly more bearish. This retracement doesn't look very good at all. Barely hitting that 8 EMA, still trying to hold this 144 on the short term. But if this rejects from here, cuts out that 144, heads toward that lowest ATR band, that's going to put you at 584. And then looking at the daily chart, of course, still bearish conditions here. Got right down to that 34 EMA on the daily chart. That's right in here around 592, hit that zone and bounced a little bit. Still waiting for this to sell to that lowest ATR band. I do believe that will happen at some point. That would take you all the way down to 577, eclipsing this lowest move from that Friday. Structurally, I still think this is bearish. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell had an amazing day, up 1.43%. We talked about it this weekend. We said small caps were in a unique position to go super bullish with the rate cuts and now the comments around quantitative easing potentially. Huge numbers pushed all the way to this trend line, broke through this structure here around 244. Looks like we're going to get a bigger breakout here. The momentum is bullish. The RSI is right there at the SMA. Once we break out from here, this is of course all-time highs on the Russell. You can see the previous peak here. Where do we go from here? My next trend structure is all the way up around kind of this 260 area. I think the Russell might be ready for a run. Been talking about it forever. It's really been rallying for a while out of this April low here, but looks very strong. Then looking at the Dow, also performed pretty well, up 0.44 right into this structure here. Looks okay. Really, the Russell is the best. Probably if you're looking for a little bit more stable, this would be where you would look, but doesn't look super great to me. Moving over to the Mag 7. Mag 7 did eclipse that low from Friday, hitting the 55 EMA there at 357.67. Either way, this continues to look very, very bearish here. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. Once this 55 goes, I think we're going to head right back into this area here, which would give you about a 6% fall towards these levels back from mid-August. And that obviously would be a pretty significant change in structure. We haven't been below that 55 EMA since all the way back here in the beginning of May time period. And we'll see what happens here, but it looks like this is going to break in the pretty near future. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple was basically unchanged on the day. Momentum bearish, RSI still bearish, structurally still bearish, but basically unchanged in this support level around 241.83 is the support. Didn't quite get there, but still hanging in from that Friday low. And then Microsoft hitting that next support here today went more bearish. Obviously didn't sell quite as badly as everything else, but did sell to that 506.71 level. Definitely some buyers coming in that area. Structurally, you can see this is still kind of grinding higher lows. Potentially 506.71 I think is going to be an important level. If that breaks, you're headed back towards these lows around here. And if that breaks, then we don't really have a whole lot of structure to work with. 144 EMA could be our next support down around 470. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA, these were the ones that I said, if you wanted to be bullish, these were the ones to look for, and they turned out pretty rough here today. So it doesn't look like there's a lot of good opportunities outside of the Russell right now. Tesla down 1.5%, NVIDIA down 4.4%, right to that 180 level, stopped right at it, 180.03, critical level there. It's bouncing just a little bit. If this breaks, then you're looking for this kind of zone in here around 167 to 172. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. I do think it'll probably go lower at this point. Tesla, on the other hand, hanging in there pretty good. The level is 414.50. Came down close to that area and held it. You're below these EMAs and SMAs right here around this kind of 144.31 to 432 area. If it rejects from here and breaks this structure here, that's going to be pretty rough. We're probably looking at the 55, closer to 375 if this zone breaks. So those are the things to watch for. As long as support holds, you can stay bullish. If this goes, you're probably going to here. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples caught a massive move here. 1.61% broke out above all of this structure here as we suspected that it would. We said this was a zone of support. Momentum flipped to bullish. RSI flipped to bullish. We're right at this downtrend line. Once that breaks, we're going to go quite a bit higher in my opinion. I think staples are looking for a run. It's been quite a bit of a downtrend for a while now. After this peak level, I think potentially we could get back to that. That would be interesting, but even still, a couple of percentage points I think is going to be pretty easy here for staples. Discretionary is pretty unchanged, up about 50 cents. Still can't get above the 235.85 level. Momentum still very much bearish here. RSI still very much bearish here, but it's hanging in there okay. Hit that highly traded zone, almost tested the low from Friday, tested the low from yesterday, caught a bounce, finishing up just a quarter at that resistance area. Moving over to breadth, 20 and 50 day breadth actually did catch a pretty strong bounce here. Interesting. We'll see if this can hold up here. Been talking about it for a while. I just don't really believe that's going to happen. I think it'll be something like this where you see kind of a bounce, consolidation before that bigger drop. So it could take a couple of days before this kind of culminates. But I do think we're going to get one of those culmination style moves. At least that's what I'm looking for. So we'll see. Right now it's hanging in there, kind of the mid-range, closer to that 50 area, really on both of these. Not bullish by any means, but not bearish either. Moving over to the dollar. Dollar finished basically unchanged on the session, down just 20 cents or so. Still think this is going to hang in here really strong and eventually catch a higher low structure here and bounce. You can see for today's price action, low, higher low structure, 144 EMA still hanging in there. You could argue maybe this is a bit of a topping pattern with a high, kind of lower high in here, but we were able to push up a little bit, throw a wick above yesterday's high. Structurally, I think there's still buyers coming in here. Of course, I'm a little bit biased. I am long dollar at this point, and I do believe the dollar will be going higher, but it's sure taking its sweet time to do it. Moving over to bonds. Bonds caught a little bit of a move. J&K still hanging out above that 96.51 level. So not everything is broken yet. Do have some areas of support that are holding. 144 and 200 SMAs sitting in here around 96.15. Do these start to catch up a little bit? Do we break through there? Something to continue to watch here in the short term, but 96.50 still hanging in there, slightly positive day. And then TLT looks super, super good, up 1/3%, closed above the bodies of these two previous candles. After hours drifting just a little bit, but new relative high close, love that. Looking for this to push to 92. Still plenty of room in here, about 2% potential on TLT over the next couple days in my opinion, and this can move pretty quick on occasion. Just look at these couple of candles here. From the 3rd up until the 8th here, we had a really nice run of about 4% in just a couple days. So this could absolutely go. I think TLT's got something in it. Moving over to the VIX. VIX continues to stay elevated here. Looks really good for the bears. Continues to hold the level at 20. New relative high wick, even with the stocks not going quite as low as we saw on the Friday, and certainly not nearly as aggressively. The VIX still staying elevated. Still think this could go to 28 ultimately. At this point, it might actually go a little bit higher. We'll see. But either way, VIX still very much a bullish structure in my opinion. Moving over to my accounts, I did go super bullish on the Russell. Once we got that breakout here, you can see bought shares on that 244 area break, went super bullish there. I actually sold calls early, a little too early. I sold them for tomorrow for 245 for about $1. Obviously got crushed on that. Rolled it out to 246 for a small debit. Still here at $2 credit, so 248 for 2 days from now. I can roll this out more if I need to, but I think I'm going to hang in there for now. You can see it's pretty much already there, 248.15 here after hours. And then Q's position, still short this call. Still in a winning position. Still believe this is going to be a bullish position. The Q's are underperforming, so that should be good for this position. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near 620, but that is what I'm playing right now. Nice little bit of a profit there. So bullish Russell, short the Qs, and still bullish dollar here. Still think the dollar is going to break out here pretty soon. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of Fed Powell's comments. What do you think about the end of quantitative tightening? How is that going to affect the markets? Are the Russell the move? Are small caps the move? With that tightening potentially done in the near term, let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.